Everyone in the music hall froze. The janitor, an old man named Walter, had just brushed his fingers across the grand piano, one reserved only for elite performers. Laughter erupted, led by Olivia, a wealthy teen prodigy known for mocking anyone beneath her. But seconds later, as Walter sat down and began to play, the air shifted, eyes widened, jaws dropped. What happened next would not only silence the crowd, it would expose a secret so powerful, no one saw it coming. Before we start, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. Now let's begin. The grand concert hall shimmered with crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, and whispers of wealthy parents dressed in evening gowns and tailored suits. It was the annual Young Musicians Gala in Charleston, South Carolina, where only the finest prodigies performed, and every seat cost hundreds of dollars. Among them sat judges, donors, and music critics from across the country. Backstage, tensions sizzled as teenagers in velvet dresses and tuxedos warmed up for their moment in the spotlight. Olivia Whitmore, the 17-year-old daughter of a tech magnate, stood confidently in her sky blue gown. She was this year's headline performer and made sure everyone knew it. Her fingers fluttered across the air as she practiced mentally, waiting for her cue. She had won 5 state competitions and once played at Carnegie Hall. To the elite, she was untouchable. To her peers, she was feared. Then it happened. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone had dared touch the concert piano. Not just someone. A janitor, an old man in a faded gray uniform with patches on the sleeves, pushing a squeaky cart filled with cleaning supplies, had placed one hand gently on the Steinway Grand. "Hey, what are you doing?" Olivia's voice rang out, sharp and amused. "That is not a toy. You cannot just touch that. Do you even know what that is?" Laughter echoed from a group of performers behind her. The janitor looked up slowly, his dark eyes calm beneath bushy gray eyebrows. His name tag read, Walter, though no one had ever cared to read it before. He blinked once and looked at the piano like it held a piece of his soul. "I was just checking the polish," Walter said softly, almost to himself. "Leave that to professionals," Olivia scoffed. "Your job is to clean, not pretend to be a musician." Someone else laughed. A parent smirked. Another student pulled out a phone to record. But instead of walking away, Walter lowered the cart handle, turned, and gently pulled out the bench. The room shifted. A hush spread like wildfire. "Wait, is he actually—" someone whispered. Walter sat. His posture straightened. His fingers hovered for a moment over the keys like he was reconnecting with an old friend. Then without a word he played. It began with a single note, soft and full of sorrow. Then a cascade of sound poured from the piano, rich and alive. The melody was haunting, filled with longing and pain, like a man reliving every chapter of a hidden past. People stopped breathing. The moment Walter's fingers touched the keys, time seemed to fold in on itself. The audience, once restless and buzzing with chatter, now sat frozen in awe. Notes poured out like memories turned into sound. Every phrase rose and fell with elegance and agony, as if the music itself carried a story too painful to speak aloud. Walter's hands moved with the precision of a master, not missing a single beat, his worn fingers gliding over the piano with haunting familiarity. At the back of the room, a veteran music critic named Martin Holloway leaned forward in his seat, eyes narrowing. He had covered symphonies for over 30 years, and what he heard now was not improvisation. It was genius. Olivia stood dumbstruck, her mouth slightly open. Her mocking expression had vanished. She could not understand it. This man, dressed in worn shoes and faded clothes, played with more depth than anyone she had ever heard. Her rehearsed routines, polished technique, and hours of private lessons all suddenly felt mechanical compared to this raw emotion. "Who is he?" someone whispered near the judge's table. Another leaned in. "He's the janitor, works the night shift, cleans up after everyone." "But this is not possible," said another, disbelief dripping from every word. As Walter continued, people began pulling out their phones, not to mock him, but to record what they were witnessing. For the first time that night, the hall was silent. not out of formality but reverence. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the music stopped. The final note lingered in the air like a secret waiting to be revealed. Walter's hands rested on the keys for a moment longer before he quietly stood up, adjusted his cap, and began pushing his cart away. No one moved. It was Olivia who broke the silence. "Wait," she called out. Her voice cracked. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Walter paused. He turned slowly, his gaze steady but kind. "My mother taught me," he said simply, and then life took over. The room remained still. Before anyone could respond, the double doors at the back opened. A woman in a navy blue blazer and gold-rimmed glasses stepped inside, her heels clicking across the marble. Her expression was urgent, scanning the crowd until her eyes locked on Walter. "There you are," she said. "Mr. Ellison, they are ready for your interview backstage." Olivia blinked. "Wait. Mr. Ellison?" Walter nodded, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "Walter Grayson," the woman added. "He is the former head pianist of the New York Philharmonic." A collective gasp surged through the room like a wave. Walter Grayson. The name floated in the room like a forgotten legend, suddenly remembered by fate itself. Olivia's face flushed with heat, not just from embarrassment, but from the overwhelming truth she had been too blind to see. She, like everyone else in that room, had reduced him to his uniform, a janitor, a nobody. But now the truth was unraveling right before her eyes, and the shame burned deeper than she had ever known. The woman in the blazer approached him again. "They are requesting your presence now. The mayor is here. They want to honor you tonight." Walter hesitated, then turned to the stunned crowd. "I was not here to be honored," he said calmly. "I came to tune the piano, but sometimes silence begs to be broken." A girl in the second row wiped away a tear. One by one, the audience stood up and began to applaud. Not the kind of polite clapping offered at recitals, but something different. It was the kind of applause born out of deep respect, the kind that shakes a room without raising a voice. Olivia's music coach, Mr. Reynolds, stepped toward the stage. His hands were trembling slightly. "Mr. Ellison," he said, "I studied your performances in college. Your interpretation of Rachmaninoff's Concerto No. 2 changed the way I saw music forever. We thought you had retired or disappeared." Walter gave a nod. "I did disappear. Life has a way of pulling you away from music, especially when grief enters the room." The mention of grief silenced even the air. No one dared to breathe too loudly. Walter continued, "My daughter played piano, just like all of you. She was only 10 when she performed at this very school. That night, a drunk driver ended her journey. I left the spotlight after that. I could not play. Not until now." Gasps and soft sobs filled the air. Olivia's eyes welled with tears. The same piano he had touched was the same one his daughter once played on. It was no longer a stage. It was a graveyard of echoes, and she had mocked him in that sacred place. Walter looked directly at Olivia. "You play well, but music is not about hitting the right notes. It is about feeling the wrong ones. Pain, loss, joy, truth." Olivia's lips quivered, and for the first time in her life, she felt completely seen and completely small. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Walter gave a gentle smile. "Do not be. Just listen." Suddenly, the lights dimmed. A spotlight landed on the piano. Someone from the staff whispered, "Play again, Mr. Ellison. Please." He looked at the instrument, paused for a long moment, then turned back toward Olivia. "No," he said. "She will play." Olivia's heart stopped. "Me?" He nodded. "Show them what you feel, not what you rehearsed." Hands shaking, Olivia slowly stepped toward the piano. She sat down, the same seat he had just occupied. The room held its breath. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Then she began. It was raw. It was not perfect, but it was real. And for the first time ever, Olivia Whitmore was not playing to impress. She was playing to speak. As Olivia's fingers moved across the keys, something inside her shifted. It was not the same mechanical repetition she had delivered in competitions or rehearsals. This time, her hands trembled with emotion. Every note told a story of shame, of awakening, of something buried deep inside that had never been allowed to surface before. The audience, once whispering, now sat frozen. Every single eye was on her. No phones, no chatter, just silence and sound. Walter stood near the back, arms crossed, eyes unblinking. It was as if he was not just listening, he was remembering. Olivia's music reached a crescendo, and as her foot lifted off the pedal, the final note hung in the air like a held breath. Then, silence. Not a silence of indifference, but the kind that wraps itself around the soul, the kind that demands respect. And then it came, a single clap, then another, and another, until the entire auditorium erupted into thunderous applause, not for perfection, for transformation. Olivia stood, hands trembling, heart pounding. She could barely look at the crowd. But when her eyes finally met Walter's, he was smiling. A real smile. Not the polite kind reserved for strangers, but the kind that says, "Now you understand." Mr. Reynolds approached the stage. "Olivia, that was the most moving performance I have ever seen from a student in this school. And Mr. Ellison, you have given this institution something we cannot measure with trophies or medals." The mayor, who had entered quietly during the performance, now stepped up. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight was not about schedules or titles. It was about rediscovering humanity. Mr. Ellison, this community owes you more than gratitude. We owe you our respect." He turned to Olivia. "And to you, young lady, your courage to own your mistake and turn it into something beautiful? That is leadership." Olivia's mother, sitting in the third row, had tears in her eyes. She had watched her daughter rise and fall, and now rise again in a way she never imagined. Walter finally walked forward, the same slow, deliberate steps he had taken as a janitor. Only now he was seen not as a background figure, but as a cornerstone. "I do not need awards," he said softly. "I only wanted one person in this room to hear something real. Tonight, she did." The crowd rose to their feet. Some applauded. Others wiped away tears. A few simply stood in the stunned silence. Later that evening, as the crowd began to leave and the lights dimmed, Olivia found Walter near the side exit, quietly gathering his tools again. His piano bench, the same one she had once sat on with pride, now seemed like a throne that had been passed down, not by force, but by grace. "Mr. Ellison," she said, stepping toward him, "I know I cannot erase what I said earlier, but I promise I will never look at another person the same way again. And I will never play music the same way either." Walter nodded. Then everything that needed to happen, happened. He picked up his worn-out toolbox and turned to leave. But just before stepping into the night, he stopped and looked back. "By the way," he said almost with a smirk, "your tempo on that last section? Perfect." And just like that, the man everyone had once ignored disappeared into the dark, leaving behind not just echoes of music, but a lesson etched into every heart that heard him. The auditorium lights faded to black, and Olivia Whitmore would never forget the janitor who taught her how to truly play. The story has come to an end, but now it is time to reflect on the vital lesson it teaches. The most significant lesson from this story is the importance of challenging our assumptions. We often judge others based on their appearance, job, or social status, but true power and strength lie within a person, not in their external circumstances. What happened to Olivia is a perfect example of how we can be blind to the potential of others simply because we look at them through a limited lens. Olivia, who thought of herself as a successful pianist, failed to see the deeper qualities in Walter, the janitor. Yet through her journey, she realized that true greatness isn't always seen in titles or fame, but in one's character and the humility they carry. Walter Grayson, a janitor who was looked down upon by many, showed the world that true power lies in one's heart, actions, and inner strength. He wasn't just a janitor. He was someone who saw value in every person he met. He believed that everyone had a story worth listening to. By being kind, patient, and wise, he touched Olivia's life in ways she couldn't have imagined. His actions revealed that people are more than their jobs or their status. His humility and sincerity were his superpowers. Olivia's journey through the story was one of realization. She had always been at the top of her game, surrounded by luxury and status. But her encounter with Walter forced her to look beyond the surface. It made her question the assumptions she had made about others and herself. She learned that we often forget that people are not defined by their roles, but by their actions, intentions, and hearts. Olivia's transformation was a wake-up call for all of us. It reminded us that our preconceived notions could blind us to the extraordinary potential in the most unexpected places. This story emphasizes that we should never judge a book by its cover. Just because someone is in a certain position, like a janitor or a pianist, it does not define their worth or their capacity for greatness. The truth is, everyone has their unique value, and we must look beyond external labels to understand the real person. Sometimes the most profound lessons come from the least expected sources. Walter, with his wisdom and kindness, taught Olivia a valuable lesson that she would carry with her for the rest of her life. His story shows that greatness can be found in the most humble places, and it is up to us to recognize and appreciate it. The moral of this story is that true success does not come from wealth, status, or titles, but from one's character, humility, and the way they treat others. The most powerful people are often those who do not seek recognition or fame, but instead aim to make a positive impact on the world around them. We should strive to be more like Walter, selfless, kind, and open-minded. Only then can we truly appreciate the potential in everyone we meet. Olivia's story is a powerful reminder that when we open our hearts and minds, we will discover that everyone has something special to offer. We need to stop judging others based on their jobs, appearances, or social standing. Instead, we should take the time to understand their stories, to recognize their worth, and to appreciate the qualities that make them unique. In the end, the most valuable lesson is that kindness, humility, and empathy are the keys to transforming not only our own lives, but also the lives of those around us.